I'd like to welcome you all to the Wednesday, September 1st, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. In accordance with Senate Bill 1202, this meeting is held through electronic transmission. Audio and video of this meeting is listed on the website. Public may listen and view the meeting. Additionally, the meeting can be viewed on a website, which is also listed. An in-person attendance is not permitted, nor will the public be allowed to offer public comment, as this is a special meeting. No testimony or other participation unless otherwise specifically stated in this notice. And with that, before we begin, I will call the roll call. Joe Crisco, you could just raise your hand. Thank you. Beth Heller is here. Paul Kyriakos.
I'm here.
Okay. David Lober. Thank you. Sheila McCrevin.
Here.
David Vogel.
Here.
Thank you. Administrative Officer and Director of Finance, Tony Genovese. Thank you. Assistant Administrative Officer, Betsy Agla. Here. Town Council, Jerry Weiner. Here. Our Clerk, Geraldine Shaw is here.
Present.
Thank you. And Media Specialist, Pool Ford is recording us this evening. And with that, we will begin the agenda with item 1. We will acknowledge the receipt of resignation of Janet Barilari from the Board of Assessment Appeals. We have a copy of her resignation in the packet. And I will just state that we accept her resignation. I don't think we have to vote on it. It's already done. She has resigned from the Board of Assessment Appeals, and we accept it with deep regret and wish her all the best. And with that, we move on to accept and consider nominee to fill the vacancy on the Board of Assessment Appeals. And action is appropriate. You have in your packet a resume. Are there any nominations? I'll call for a nomination for this position. Go ahead, David Vogel.
Yeah, I nominate Lynn Yang, whose resume is in the packet.
Thank you. I'll second the nomination. Is there any discussion? Any other nominations? Sorry. Hearing none, I will close nominations and call for a vote. All in favor of Lynn Yang assuming the position of to replace Janet Barilari on the Board of Assessment Appeals, please signify by raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Paul. Paul, you're an aye?
No, I'm sorry. No.
Okay. So 5 ayes is okay. Thank you. Are there any nays? Paul, can I clarify? Are you an aye or a nay?
I'm an aye.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the vote is unanimous, and congratulations to Ms. Yang. Thank you so much. With that, Jerry, you can let in our folks. We will move to item 3 on the agenda, which is Arbor Haven Development Proposal, former Country Club of Woodbridge. This is discussion for the Board of Selectmen at this point. Representatives of Arbor Haven are here to answer board members' questions and hopefully get answers. And I would ask you to be respectful and polite and ask questions that are appropriate to the proposal before us this evening that we saw at our regular Board of Selectmen meetings a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember the date right at the moment. And with that, would anyone like to see a short presentation, or are we all comfortable? You have a copy of the entire presentation in the packet, so I think we can probably just move to Q&A. And I will call on the board members one at a time. Joe Crisco, do you have any questions at this point? You can always go back. Okay, no. Thanks, Joe. I will reserve my questions till the end. Paul Kyriakos.
I don't have any questions at this time. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you. David Lober.
Yeah, I do have a question here. And it has to do with the educational cost. I'm interested in learning how that figure was calculated for the cost per student. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Joe Miko, would you by chance be able to respond to that question?
It looks like he's muted at this point.
I'm-
In order to unmute, on the bottom of your screen, there is a icon that that
there we
says
go.
mute.
There he's got it.
Am I unmuted now?
You are, Joe.
All right, sorry, I was saying, David, I'll take that one. The way that I came to that calculation is I called up Dr. Budd, spoke to him, then I called up Mr. Hewitt, who is your business manager for the school district. And then I spoke to Tony Genovese. So I went on a fact-finding mission, if you will, and collected information. The responses I got were fairly unanimous. You don't take the budget and divide it by the number of students and get 18,000 and call that the incremental cost, because it's simply not the way it's done. The administrators were fairly adamant about that. It's a little more sophisticated than that approach. There was a breakdown between the high school and the elementary school. The high school's a little more expensive than the elementary school, but they get a little more subsidy for the high school than they do for the elementary school. And so we kind of came to I don't want to say weighted cost number because I'm not that intelligent. We came to kind of an average, which was about $12,500 was your incremental cost per student in the system. And some people I spoke with said it could be a lot less. They gave me examples. If you have a kid who's going into the 3rd grade and his house is on the route for the bus, they don't have to buy a bus. If there's a seat in the 3rd grade class, they don't have to add a teacher or a classroom, so the incremental cost could be relatively low. Obviously, it's complicated up to the point where you have an actual head count, which we don't have, and we're not going to speculate about that. So we just used the number that you see in front of you, David.
Okay, I understand how you did that. I kind of did it the same way. And I also spoke to the people that you spoke to, with the exception of Mr. Genovese. There's a complication in figuring that way because we have, at least in the Beecher Road School, most of the classrooms are at to or close to capacity, which means if you start adding just a few students to those grades, you're going to have to spin out another classroom, which means you're going to have to hire another teacher and another aide. So the incremental cost is difficult to figure, but it's more than what you figured. The other issue is that if you have I think you had 150 some odd students that you estimated. If you put half of those into Beecher Road School, you may not have enough classroom space. You have to put an addition on that building, which will be a considerable extra cost. So those things, if you're looking at the cost figures, you have to factor in those possibilities as well. And I just wanted to bring that to people's attention.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly, David. My answer is I build houses that people want to live in and the town will be proud of. And I'm not a school administrator and I don't do school budgets. So it's as simple as that.
Thank you. Thank you.
David, do you have any other questions?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Sheila.
Sure. I just had kind of 2 questions I wanted to follow up on. And one was something I had asked at the previous meeting about how the paths would visually present themselves to the person walking on them and whether there's any way. And I know there's an update here to the presentation materials that we actually saw. So I was going to ask about that. And then the other question I had, I just wanted to make sure, I think I understood that for the large home lots that seem to be on the perimeter, both on Johnson Road and that's Ansonia Road, there's no city streets that you're proposing. I think I heard you say that there'd be a driveway and one driveway would serve two homes, the one close by the street and the one behind it. So there'd be a series of driveways for these individual home lots. And then could you tell me if that's correct, if the other roads that you're proposing, are those going to be town roads that we maintain, snowplow, et cetera, or are they part of like a complex and there'd be a homeowners association that would plow, for example?
Shall I answer that one as well, gents?
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. The way that we propose doing the lots on Ansonia and Johnson are, think of a fourplex rather than a duplex. One driveway would service two fronts and two backs. So instead of having a lot of little driveways, you'd have, I think the number was 4 on one road and 5 on the other road. So you wouldn't have driveways every 200 feet, you'd have them every 400 feet. Right. So that is the concept behind the larger houses abutting Johnson and Ansonia. The interior roads would be part of the private property, if you will, of the development. And we were thinking of something like homeowners association light, where the homeowners association is not getting into every detail of every house. It's simply, we've got snow plowing, we've got road maintenance. There'll be some public park areas within the private land, if you want to call it that, which would be the homeowner's responsibility. We wouldn't feel it would be a burdensome expense because you pay for it one way or the other. That's the reality. You had another question, Sheila, but I didn't.
Yeah, I guess just let me make sure I understand. So there's no public roads being proposed in this proposal. And I'm looking at the page with the big purple, green, and yellow blocks
Right.
labeled site plan, home types. Okay. So those roads that we see there are going to be private roads, not maintained by the town.
Yeah, they would be incorporated into the development. The current public roads would remain as they are: Woodfield, Ansonia, Johnson, which go around the perimeter. And you'll have to snowplow those.
Yeah, and patching the potholes as
Exactly.
lots of homeowners like to talk to us about. So it looks like there's 3 roads coming in from the public roads, but those are going to be private roads, and then they branch all around. Terrific. Yeah, that does answer my question. Thank you.
Wasn't there another question you prefaced with about?
Regarding the identity of the walking paths.
Yeah.
Yes, is one who's traveling them. How do you know where you are?
Yeah, and I guess maybe what I'm confused is, so there's roads and then there's the green paths. So they're not on top. There's never one that has them both, I guess. Maybe that's what.
Well, you're not going to put bike paths and walking paths on top of the road, especially given that you have the opportunity with this property, because of all of these mature trees, to sort of wend the paths around the trees, and there's a lot of good space there that you can utilize. You're not going to damage the trees with a bike path because it's not a paved surface. It's pervious, so that water can go through it, etc. So it's the exterior part, which would abut Johnson, Woodfield, and Ansonia. Let's take Johnson and Ansonia. The larger lots, they have a setback by zoning definition. Okay, so you can't build anything 50 feet within the road, which means why not leave the green space, since you can't do anything with it as a homeowner, And we'll create a deed restriction which says that the first 25 feet is available for the bike path in perpetuity, and you can't block it with a fence and simple things like that. And then it would run across. It would run across the driveways that we mentioned. All right, so those 4 driveways on one road and 5 on the other, the bike path would cross over those. But since it's a private drive, we figure it's a lot safer than running it along a road or in a road. So, we're trying to balance the considerations of the homeowner, the considerations of the people who want green space, the considerations of the people who are concerned about the safety of the kids, which is my major concern, and come up with a solution which balances all those things.
Just to add on to that, I have some experience of walking on paths that are interspersed between homes, and you feel as walking along those paths, which is sort of what we're basing this on. It does feel that you are not walking through someone's backyard, which I think is one of your issues. It's the idea would be to have additional planting put in there, markers so that people very clearly know where is that's someone's home, and you shouldn't be walking in there. But it's not going to be like someone is just peering in and checking things out. That would be something we use planting to avoid.
Okay. So it sounds like we should envision something like a sidewalk, especially when you're running along the edge of the road, but not concrete, not paved, kind of stone dust. What kind of material?
There's so I found one that I found a material that has some sort of nano composite that allows it to actually not degrade when the rain comes. It doesn't flow into all of the drains and such. But it's essentially, it'll look and feel like a gray version of a clay court, but it's not that exact material because that's where it does a lot of runoff. We've got one that doesn't have runoff, so it's not going to be ruining people's lawns and all the drains and the pond, stuff of that nature. But essentially, it's going to feel more natural than pavement by a long shot.
Okay.
If you want a shorthand version, Sheila, think item 4 with a binder. All right. I don't know if you know what item 4 is. It's the stuff that they put on the roads.
Oh.
The gravel, like the fine gravel that they put on the top layer. All right. And they mix a binder in with it so it doesn't wash away, but it's still pervious.
Yeah, I think I have seen that. Yeah. So maybe you could send us a photo or something of the material that you had in mind.
Sure.
Just to help us visualize it a little bit more. That's great. Thank you.
That it, Sheila?
That's it.
Thank you. All right. David Vogel.
Thank you. I had 2 or 3 questions, and one relates to the 1/3 of an acre sample lots that you have listed here. Is that going to require a new zoning situation for that piece of property?
We don't know the answer to that.
So maybe I can help out, David.
Yeah.
Sure.
Prior to this Planning and Zoning Commission review of the regulation, when they had the application submitted by Open Communities, this was this area was not zoned for multifamily housing, which is part of the proposal here, and that would have, in those days when we were dealing with those proposals, would have required a zone change. Since the Planning and Zoning Commission acted 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks, 6 weeks ago, multifamily housing is allowed in this limited allowance in this district, and it appears that there will be no requirement for a zone change. This is a permitted use now and could go without a zone change. And as you recall, that was one of the big objections in the past for any of these projects, the senior housing projects. But the Zoning Commission has revamped the zoning regulations, and this probably qualifies under the current regulation.
Okay. Second question I had for you is I'm looking at the utility costs, estimates, and does this anticipate that there's going to be public sewer and water throughout this development?
I believe the answer to that is yes.
So will those, I'm assuming that then there'll be a cost for the water and the hookup. I mean, that'll be a cost. And I guess that comes with some sort of a monthly cost, right?
It would
Addition.
be,
We
it
would need
depends
to,
upon, it would depend upon how you set it up. Generally, on the East Coast, it's done as an addition to the property tax bill. At least that's what I get in my town. I live just across the border.
But
But
that's not reflected in these estimates yet because you don't know what that's going to be.
we don't, we haven't drilled down that deeply yet.
And then Alexander, you mentioned the issues about the runoff with the trails and so forth. Have you done any look at what your new construction will do to add to the runoff of rainwater and the sort of torrents that we're having now in terms of where that water will go once your development has gone in? Has there been an engineering study of that yet, or?
Alexander, could I speak to that? We don't have civil engineering on it yet, but naturally a civil engineer's job is to make sure that that kind of issue is resolved properly, so we don't all go floating away at some point.
one of the things is that since there's a golf course and you already have that additional pond on the northeast of the site, we would continue to use that pond to some degree, but there's also going to be storm drains, things of that nature. We're very cognizant of the potential issues with runoff. That's absolutely going to be very, very carefully considered, and that will be sent through your zoning commission. Make sure it's up to snuff, and we would probably take into account the additional rain that seems to be happening across the Northeast. That's you have to keep in mind the changing conditions are indeed those. So we will be very aware of it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, there's a house here on Johnson Road that just recently sold that backs up to that property. And it usually has water runoff problems from the brook that comes out of that area anyway. I'm concerned that, and that brook also goes by my house, which isn't really going to be an issue for me, but.
That was the one we were going to use.
Yeah, I was going to send some extra water your way, Dave.
It'll be fine. I've never had a problem with it, but who knows? But I just, I know that they might, have some issues if there's a lot more water that comes in because their back area is kind of a bit of a bog anyway. I noticed that some of these roads come very close to Woodfield, but we're not going to have any access to Woodfield for your development. Is that correct?
There is 2 access points on Woodfield. One where the cell phone tower is.
Okay.
And we would repurpose the entrance where the clubhouse is.
Okay. So there will be a couple of places onto Woodfield as well.
And just one more thing to speak to the drainage issue. If anything, with the development and the addition of our engineering that will be done on site, we may even reduce the amount of drainage that's going directly into that brook. As you know, we will have storm drains, etc., as we're building up. And what might end up happening, and don't take this to the bank, but it may end up actually reducing the amount that goes directly into the brook. Because right now it's all just going straight to it. But if we've got storm drains and the like, to slow down the flow of water throughout the development, it might end up actually improving the flow issue there. I again, not certainty, but just generally when doing development, that is a likelihood.
Thank you. That answers my questions. Thanks, Beth.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Beth, I just want to clarify what was mentioned earlier.
Sure.
The sewer and water charges, about the sewer and water charges. So they're not part of our town property tax bill. They're separate entities, and so therefore the water authority and the sewer Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority each would bill separately. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
And those will be billed to the homeowners directly on a monthly
Correct.
basis.
They bill to the homeowners directly, correct.
Directly.
The town's not involved.
Okay.
Oh, and
Good question.
also, just to speak to the utility costs that were listed on the affordable breakdown, I believe that is those are just for state requirements when you're coming up with what the purchase price can be. You have requirements as to how much people can pay for utilities, and you have to have an allowance for utilities in there, and that's to make sure that people are still able to afford their homes. So those estimates, I think, are related more to that than when it comes to calculating the impact of the town.
Yeah, actually, that was more to my question. Affordable housing, when you have to tack on things that are going to be actual expenses, are obviously issues. So that was why I asked the question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, it'll have to be paid
Go in there
for the
eventually.
rest of everything. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna ask the question about the zoning, so Jerry took care of that, and David took care of that one for me. And other than that, I'm pretty comfortable with all the answers from the questions asked tonight. I will call out again, does anyone have any additional questions?
Yeah. Hey, Beth, I have a question for Jerry.
Go ahead, David.
Okay.
Jerry,
I'd like to understand his citation on the zoning or the lack of zoning requirement. As I understand it, what the commission voted for, and I have it here, permitting the construction of accessory dwelling units, two-family units by permit when served by public water and sewer, and by site plan approval when not, and a special exemption when in a public water supply watershed. So, and multifamily units by special exception when not in public watershed supply. So, could you explain how we don't need a zoning change in that area? Could you clarify that, please?
So special exception is not a zone change. It is now zoned for multifamily housing and single-family housing. They do need to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, show site plan, show that they comply with the setback requirements, the front yard requirements, height requirements, and things like that. But the zone it is now zoned for multifamily housing, and it is now zoned for single-family housing. There is some requirement that planning and zoning see the plans, approve the plans, make sure it complies with all other aspects. But in the past, the property was not zoned for multifamily housing. It was only zoned for 1.5 acre single family housing. And that's the big change. So there is no zone change, although there is planning and zoning permission that is required.
I read this as two-family units are permitted. Is that incorrect?
I think it's multifamily. I think it's 3 or more. But I can get back to you on that. I will talk.
Well, I'm looking at the decision here, but okay, you can get back to me on that.
I already had a conversation with Marion Dubuque, who was our zoning expert and was counsel to the zoning commission, and she indicated that this does not require a zone change. But she has looked at the plans as well. I will confirm that with her and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one
Sure. Yep.
follow up? And maybe this is something that Jerry could answer or have Marianne answer for us. But so with that zoning change, when it takes effect, I think I understood that there's still site plan review by TPZ for a project like this. It's not one of the things that would just go to public health and water, et cetera. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, so Jerry, I'll just ask you, next steps. I know that our presenters were interested in beginning to reach out to several boards and commissions. Is that correct? That's the next step?
So, so the next step is that they can reach out. I can just tell you what the history is. We have no rules or regulations for something like
Yeah,
this.
okay, thank you.
It generally is a public meeting where in this case it would have to be Zoom, where residents would be able to ask questions generally of the proponents get their questions answered. And before that, in the past, we've had the Board of Selectmen vote to take either to take or not take the proposal to the next step, which would be public meeting, reviewing the plans before relevant boards and commissions. And then the Board of Selectmen, if it so choose, could either send it to a referendum or not send it to a referendum. You can take that vote as to whether you should go further to the public meetings tonight, or you could do it on September 8th. There is another letter of a proponent that I think the board has that the Board of Selectmen might want to look at as well.
So would it be your recommendation that we just wait to,
I think the recommendation would be on September 8th, add it to the agenda and take a vote and decide whether we should schedule a public meeting. And
Okay.
after that public meeting, as well as meetings with boards and commissions, and after that period of time, then go ahead and decide whether you want to send it to a referendum or not send it to a referendum.
So this is next Wednesday,
Yes.
okay, which is our regular Board of Selectmen meeting, and it's at 6 o'clock instead of 5 while I'm at it, okay. So anyone have anything else at this point?
Beth, I just had a quick thought regarding the interior roads. And I know when we say boards and commissions looking at it, but I can remember that the fire department had some concerns about getting trucks around certain, angles of intersections. So maybe they could take a look, because that would be pretty important, right?
Could
Yeah.
I speak to that?
Please.
As part of the planning board review process, the fire department would absolutely be advising on the efficacy of the road system.
Yeah, at this point, this is more just concepts, trying to understand what is possible to give you guys an idea as to whether or not you like it. But making sure that sufficient access is given is absolutely critical. Completely agree.
Correct. This turning radius of some of those trucks is rather large, so. Okay, anyone else? Again, I'll call it out. Anyone have any other further questions? So we will add this to the agenda for next Wednesday. And if anything else comes up in the meantime, please send your questions or whatever to me. We'll get them to the guys and or to Tony or to Jerry. Anything else? Very good. I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Non-debatable, signify by saying aye by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3. Or Paul.
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry, my video keeps cutting out.
No worries, my friend. Okay. Everyone stay safe and hunker down this evening. Hope we don't lose power tonight. And thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the presenters this evening for agreeing to come in.
Thank you.
We
for your
appreciate it
time.
very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Take care,
Thank you.
everyone. Good night.